Up next, we have a second panel discussion on the evolution of vehicle intelligence. The session will explore how smart hardware and software are being integrated to advance connected autonomous driving. Moderating this panel is Darshan Kudva, Executive Director at PwC. Please welcome Mr. Darshan. Now I'd like to invite on stage Mr. Yogesh Umbarkar, Vice President Mobility, Valtech Mobility. Please welcome Mr. Yogesh. Now I'd like to call upon stage Mr. Dhanasekar Venkatesan, Systemz Dynamics and Autonomous Solutions, Hexagon. Please welcome Mr. Dhanasekar. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Sharad Mehta, Head of Embedded Systems, ADAS, Novus High-Tech Robotic Systems. Please welcome him. Now I'd like to invite on stage Saumya Bhattacharya, General Manager, Rosmerta Technologies Limited. Please welcome Mr. Bhattacharya. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a warm round of applause, please. Over to you, Mr. Darshan.
Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this panel discussion on vehicle intelligence. My name is Darshan. I'm a management consultant. My job is essentially to connect the dots, right? So I'm here as an observer to hear the eminent panelists talking and try and see how we can connect the dots and see if new opportunities, new insights, new initiatives can be taken from this discussion. So I invite all of you to this panel discussion, and let me start by asking a provocative question first to all the panelists. You know, there are multiple moving pieces as far as vehicle intelligence is concerned. On the one hand, you have software, which is driving new use cases. Then you have hardware, which is evolving every day. Then you have consumers making newer and newer demands. And then there is government asking you to follow a particular protocol and so on and so forth. Right? My opening question to all the panelists here is, you know, who is sitting at the wheel? Who is the driver here? And who is setting the directions for the industry to follow? Right, and you can think of the entire ecosystem for this particular question. And let me start with Mr. Yogesh to, take a position.
Sure. Yeah, I think Darshan, thanks, and thanks to Future Mobility for giving the opportunity. The question is really vital. I mean, in today's world, similar to that, there's a lot of other questions in terms of who owns the data, or as previously the panel said, even in the cybersecurity, who is the responsible, right? Whether it's a OEM, whether it's a tier one, it's a technology supplier, or even some other stakeholder. Coming back to your question, definitely we do see from the connected vehicle per se, if I have to say that who is driving it, and obviously I would say it's a consumer who is driving the connected vehicle thing, because the way we say earlier, we used to say kitna deti hai in terms of the mileage or power, right? And now it's more digital power. How much is that digital power? How many features we have in the vehicle? And that is really driving the consumer train towards which vehicle to go. And then it's not just the people like us, the tech-savvy few people, but then there are other the Gen Z people, and even for me as a I am having a daughter like 16, 17 years. I mean, my next decision will be more driven by her than me, essentially. And that she is going to look at what are the features, what are the kind of a smart, intelligent, convenience-related games, and many other things, right, which is the connected vehicle. So I would definitely see when it comes to the future and the real end game for the connected, it's a consumer who is driving it. But obviously then the next thing is that connected mobility is driven by the software, and then underneath to that is the hardware. So that's how the hierarchy I can put it up.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Yogesh. Mr. Dhana, you want to take a position now, yeah?
So I would like to, agree with him. So the customer is the one like who is driving this need, right? So like earlier, like we want to go, like in the previous panelist also mentioned, like we want to go A to B. So that is done. But thing is like we are like every day, like we are comparing. So what is like A versus B vehicle is giving additional, right? So that way, like we are putting more pressure on the OEMs. So to be competitive enough and then try to come up with a new technology, so that way like they will be like number one in the market, okay? So like a few weeks back I saw in LinkedIn, there is a post from Hawaii. So they are like coming up with a vehicle where you have a projector, like it's a big screen. It's not like traditional 9-inch or 10-inch, right? You can have like a big screen within the car itself. So they are saying like you have the comfortable of like home theater within the car. You say like if you're going out, if you get bored down, yeah, you can also watch movies in your car. So these are like something like, okay, the OEMs trying to come up with some innovative idea so that customer wants are addressed. So basically the customer who drives it. That's what I also feel it.
Sure. Mr. Sharad.
Yep. So I agree to what has been said for who owns it or who doesn't. See, the ask from the vehicle itself, particularly from the passenger vehicle segment, I would say the ask has changed over the period of time. Since the last decade, you will see earlier as it was been said, point A to point B. That was the only motive. Now you spend almost like 20% of your daytime in your vehicle. So the ask from the vehicle manufacturer totally changed. Now it needs an internet connectivity wherein the infrastructure guys comes in. There is a comfortable seat that you need that there in the OEM comes in. You need a power steering which is really effective. There are cybersecurity norms that are there from the regulation point of view. There are multiple of things, as he rightly said, there is a projector if you are feeling bored, right? You are in a traffic jam for 3 hours or 5 hours, if you are in Delhi or Gurgaon, you would like to enjoy something. Or at least have your mobile connected to your infotainment system and hear out sounds and stuff like those. So all these requirement changes from the end customer. Effectively, OEMs are thinking of how we can make those changes, how we can sell the, most of our vehicles are being, every OEM want to sell more of their vehicle, right? So there are people from different, I would say, verticals, from the regulation, from OEM, customer, infrastructure people. When we talk about EV, there are charger people who are giving charging facilities. There is a connection from, let's say, 5G providers, infrastructure providers therein. So all the stakeholders have their own say and stake, and similarly, they all have to be in sync to give whatever required.
Thank you. Mr. Saumya.
So I think it's more of a pull and push mechanism. So there's a demand and a supply. And of course, the customer or the consumer, the end consumer is pushing the system to move forward, the industry to innovate, to do new technology innovations, bring in cybersecurity aspects into it, and thereby taking all these aspects into consideration, there is a regulatory push also parallelly happening all across. So it's a combined effort as I see, but primarily driven from the consumer side, the customer sides. Of course, we have over the period seen the transition of a point A to point B connectivity, as we all are talking about. But the congestions, the requirements, the aspirations of consumers have changed over the period of time. The vehicle technologies have changed due to this aspect. And thus, the regulatory norms and requirements have also gradually changed. Vehicle OEMs are also getting into a rat race to cater to that demand of the customer or have an edge of the other. So that's how we are into a vicious cycle, and everybody is playing a specific role in their process. But of course, the fulcrum or the spoke is the consumer out here. Right.
Thank you. I was actually trying to create the nation wants to know kind of a moment, but we have very united panelists over here. So, but let me take another attempt at this. When iPhone came, right, uh, the consumers did not demand for an iPhone. It was the visionary of certain leaders in the software and the hardware industry who showed the art of the possible and brought the consumers along, right? But we have a panel over here who thinks consumer is driving it. So how do you see me reconcile this gap?
Yep. So, rightly said, that's a good example of iPhone wherein there was a visionary who said, okay, let's change the perspective of the end user and bring in more features. It's all about the UI that everybody wants to. So similarly, in every field, even in automotive, the same thing happened. They started up with giving out more features, more comfort. So you must have noticed in previous vehicles from OEMs, it was more like a truck feeling rather than a luxury feeling, right? And post that, I did not take the name, but post the mergers you had seen, yes, there is a huge change in the luxury thing that came into the passenger vehicle segment, and people actually started to feel, okay, now this is available. Now that was the table stake then. Now, post the table stake had changed, that's the mandate. You have to provide that particular feature set. Like power steering, when it started, it was more like, okay, you need to give it into a high end or your power window system. It was only from the driver's side, and now it's a standard for all the four doors or all the four windows that you get. So now similarly, if you talk about other such features like infotainment system being connected and stuff like those, now these are like standard feature sets and all those. So you started up, obviously there was to increase the sales or increase the demand, it was being said, but now these are all stable stake that are coming in.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is, while the hardware player and the software player, you can come with different innovations, but what stays is what consumer thinks is important. So from that perspective, we all agree that consumer is kind of at the driving seat really to push the industry forward.
Consumer is the boss.
Absolutely, consumer is the king. That reality has not changed even with so much data and intelligence coming in. All right, so that kind of takes a good segue into understanding the consumer a little better, right? Maybe I can ask Mr. Yogesh, what is the kind of the dominant use case that the consumers want today? And how are you kind of offering your services to cater to the needs of the consumer, right? We are trying to see how is the consumer's demand met better and their needs taken care of?
Yeah, I think as we said, for the connected vehicle particularly, the consumer is the king. And then now I'll just take one example on the e-mobility side, because as we have been talking since morning, we're getting a lot of traction on the EV side. Obviously, there are challenges on the range anxiety, then charging infrastructure, and even the availability of the charger or reliability of the charger and so on, right? And that's where one of the thought process which we are building further on, how do we ensure, irrespective of this challenge, how we bring the integrated ecosystems at the age of convenience, comfort, where somebody will be able to go from point A to point B, cover his whole journey. And then there could be a pointer which I think Mr. Patra was also talking about, how do I make my journey maybe greener or cheaper or faster, right? So ensuring that when I go from point A to point B, can I get on the charger who is having a renewable energy to make it greener? Can I have a fast charger where I'm a business guy, I just want to go faster, I don't want to wait and then consume my time? Or I am just more a cost-effective looking at guy where I want to make sure that I can wait, but I want to charge at a point where I get a cheaper unit energy, right? So and at the same time, looking at, I'm with family, I want to have a stop where there is a more safety, more convenience for my kids, family, I can have some better time while the vehicle is getting charged, or on the go where certain kind of a point of interest gets pushed out. I also need to ensure that now coming to the point where that whatever the convenience and the services which you're offering, how we can bring the ecosystem partner to make it more sustainable. What is the value which the CPO guys can get out of that is we looking at the, not just the, when you go there, you see a lot of challenges, whether the screen is not working, the charger is not compatible, although it's been said, and then the wait time for the charging is kind of getting longer and longer. So how we bring that ecosystem to say that the CPO guys ensure that the chargers are reliable there, they are working. At the same time, there is enough traffic load on his chargers there. He need to add more chargers, or he need to incentivize the EV owner to say that, hey, here the charging is quite occupied, why don't you go further, I give you 10% more discount, right? So that's incentivizing him, and at the same time, we ensure that the CPO guys do then their utilization of the chargers, so that demand supply game get managed, so it's making him much more sustainable from the business model perspective as well, right? And then one of the thing is then how you ensure that the EV user can also make his plan based on the battery analytics thought process, right? Because he want to make sure that his range anxiety is not there. He want to be able to plan that, okay, when I reach my next destination, I need to have 20% SOC minimum or 30% minimum SOC. So how I can ensure that integrated kind of a ecosystem on my kind of a convenience and within the vehicle where I would be able to do the connected charging, connected parking, connected payment as well, right? And bringing all those players for the convenience and ensure that he gets the journey much safer, better, cheaper. Yeah.
That's an excellent coverage of the day in the life of a consumer, how he or she views mobility, and how multiple players have to come together to deliver the use case that consumer wants. So with that insight, let me just move to Mr. Dhana. Mr. Yogesh spoke about multiple stakeholders, multiple entities coming together. So this involves some are hardware players, some are software players, some are charge point operators, infrastructure. There are so many people have to come together. How do you see this integration happening to achieve the necessary use case, right? Even if one of the players in the ecosystem fails, then the entire ecosystem suffers, right? So the consumer does not get the use case that they are really wanting to experience. So how do you see this integration happening?
Yeah, this is really a good question, right? So we have different vendors, different products has been developed, and once we integrate it, and how they are going to perform, right? So that's something we cannot test it every time, and again it's numerous scenarios, and it will be time consuming, right? So practically impossible. So that's where virtual scenarios, right? So virtual model, virtual testing gets into play. So where we will try to mimic the reality. So virtually we try to create those scenarios or environment, and then we connect the entire systems, and then we try to test for all the conditions, right? So of course, in the previous panelist mentioned, right? So failure is unavoidable, but we try to minimize the failure. So that way, we try to cover up all the scenarios, if and conditions, right? So with that, we try to test, and whenever if it fails, that will be recorded, and it will be provided to the corresponding development team to analyze the data and see that why the failure happened and how we can address it. So that way, nowadays we have a lot of virtual environments, say for example in this, behind the screen we have, right? So the vehicles, how they are connected, so everything we can virtually create it. So virtually we create those environments and how they are going to interact, the details of it, like even that road lanes, markings, the environment, trees, signal, and the timings. So everything will be like created, and the systems will be created, and vehicle, even like going for vehicle dynamics, how each vehicle going to move, what speed, and the driver preferences, like so driving behavior, right? How the driver, each driver going to drive it. So those are the parameters. So these are considered as a parameter and which will be varied. So that way we will get a numerous scenarios. So with that, they are going to test and see that how the entire like autonomous is like. So that is really important, right? ADAS is getting every domain into a single thing. So everyone needs to test it. So then only the ADAS overall it will function. Okay, autonomous. So that's where like I have seen like a lot of OEMs are testing millions of scenarios. They are connected with the cloud, and day and night the scenarios are running, and they are ensuring that all the ECUs are like working and it's able to pass it.
Thank you. So in summary, is it fair to say that the problems created by technology, the technology is only coming and solving it, right? With virtualization and so on. So now we see, it's an ecosystem play, right? There are multiple players involved. Now, if somebody wants to dominate this ecosystem, right, is it possible for any one entity with one type of capability to kind of make a use case come alive, right? The point I'm trying to make is that everybody can't be everything. So is partnerships the way to go, right? How important do you think is partnerships? Let me invite Mr. Sharad to talk a bit about that.
So, as rightly said, there are multiple things that obviously no single entity would be able to cater to all the requirements. So I think, yes, partnership is an answer. So it leads you to like availability of expertise. It leads you to sharing the resources. It leads you to helping the testing agencies, forming the regulations, or let's say supporting the regulations agencies. So since there are multiple stakeholders, there are multiple entities working against achieving something which is there as a requirement, or let's say the industrialists or OEMs or the community looks at things like, okay, this should be achieved by, let's say 2030 or 2027 kind of time frame. So there are multiple people who has to come together. So let's take an example of autonomous, right? So even Novus High-Tech has been doing autonomous vehicles since last more than a decade now. But when it comes to a fully autonomous vehicle running on the road, it needs so many other things. You need infrastructure on the road. You need proper signage. You don't prefer having odd vehicles running onto the road, or pedestrians using the same lane, which is likely that happens in India. So, and then there are certain restrictions which are actually not available. Let's say from the government side, as Mr. Gadkari also said, looking at autonomous vehicles, or let's say certain level of autonomy would be sometimes another 2 decades or so. So with all those thought process, I believe, yes, there should be a partnership among different stakeholders or service providers, or I would say technology providers or integrators or OEMs. It can be a partnership among those guys. And the only thing is that you should choose your partners wisely. That as in the previous forum also, it was been said that you should abide by, okay, not just the certification, getting the certificate out of it. You should abide by the cybersecurity things. You should think of, okay, if something goes wrong, what will happen actually on the road? It will be total chaos, right? So with that thought process, you should choose wisely whom do you want to connect with, whom do you want to partner with. But obviously, without partnership, getting to the market with the desired feature sets and cyber secure things, autonomous level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever level you want to achieve, it would be really, really difficult. So my choice would always be, yes, we should partner together and then deliver to the end customers. That is what is.
Sure. Partnership is the way to go. we're talking about, the supply side and the demand side, right? We spoke a bit about the supply side, how the ecosystem has to come together to deliver a particular use case. Now again, shifting a little back to the demand side, let me go to Mr. Saumya. Mobility has multiple form factors, right? There are cars, there are trucks, there are two-wheelers. There are many form factors available at this point in time. Where do you think the use cases are strongest, and where do you see connected vehicle intelligence having the best traction? I mean, I'm sure every form factor is in a state of evolution, but where do you think the pace is slightly faster? Can you just throw some light around that, please?
Okay. So when we look out at the scenario where we are moving towards, where we are going forward, we need to have a very clear understanding of where are the challenges and where the opportunity lies. And currently in this industry, when we are talking about vehicles, technologies, telematics, everything which are currently on a parallel platform catching up to each other, and one moving forward and the other one is catching up. So there are a lot of ecosystems which are building up. Like for examples, if I see the telematics in the track and trace system, primarily the program which has been developed and mobilized by Ministry of Road Transport and Highways for the women and child safety, that has picked up a lot of traction on the ground. Lots of vehicles are getting covered. Lots of data are also getting generated. And with these data getting generated, we have a lot of use cases coming up. Number two field is that there is an add-on to that. One is this women and child safety, then moving on to a new initiative again with the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and National Highway Authority of India. The GNSS tolling is also coming up, right? The technology is also moving forward for the adoption of GNSS technologies. So again, the track and trace is coming up. The telematics industry is catching up. There is a huddle across the system, and the solution providers, technologies in moving ahead on that. Now, parallelly, if we see the e-commerce industry and the last mile connectivities are also getting more integrated across the scenarios. Again, the reliability, the assurance of the delivery from the logistics side and from the consumer side. So that is also catching up with this telematics and the connected technologies. Now, where we are moving forward is basically a requirement is generated, and with that, the technology is trying to give us solution to that, right? Some more part I would just like to add on is that we are talking of ADAS, we are talking of autonomous technologies. There are one step backward are video analytics on vehicles. So that is also one of a very important part, which is actually we have missed out, or the OEMs have actually missed out over the period of time. There was no analytics, no autonomy. Suddenly we are getting into the autonomy. We are talking of ADAS 1, 2, 3, 4. But there was a blip in between. We could have captured that aspirations of a smart technology of using a video telematics. So that is also one of a very important aspect of the ADAS component, which is a video-based analytics. And also, a very important part which we are coming up and seeing, which is moving forward, is that the CV2X, which is coming up in a much bigger way, which is going to absolutely change the way we look at the transportation, the mobility, and the connectivity entire scenario, which is going to come to a complete overhaul, where everything is connected, be it a infrastructure on the ground, be it a infrastructure on the vehicle, be it the human to device, device to vehicle connectivity, and with the connectivity platforms moving in and around, we have an intelligent systems which are safer, which are predictive, which are much more user-friendly, and we are going to look at it coming up in a very big way. lots of technologies, innovations are going on around that sector. Right?
Thank you. In the previous panel discussion, there was a question around why complicate the system, right? Keep it simple, silly. You know, it has been working fine for 100 odd years. It will work fine for another 100 more years. Why complicate it? So I think the answers are there in the points that you mentioned. So much of features, so much of use cases have come up, which now you can't live without, right? So once you've seen it, the consumers don't want to get a car which doesn't have these features. So in a way, we are compelled to become more complicated. And added to that, maybe let me just segue into a different topic. What are the new business opportunities created, right? At the end of the day, somebody has to pay for this, right? And somebody has to deliver value to the consumers, and therefore the sustenance of innovation, sustenance of all these new technologies happens. So what are the new business opportunities that are created because of this, and how is the mobility ecosystem spreading itself out of its mobility ecosystem and getting into other ecosystems as well? Mr. Yogesh, you want to go?
Yeah, I think as we say, the collaborations are happening very well, but at the same time, OEMs, as you said, with these features and the expectation from the consumer side, there's a lot of investment has gone from the OEM into putting those software in place, hardware, and even connecting the infrastructure. But at the same time, if you look at once the vehicle connectivity subscription over, how much is the real take-up rate or subscription renewal is very less. So then that's where now OEMs are looking at how do I get the return on that investment? And then that's where we would say that the opportunities are coming in terms of, okay, so with these connected vehicles, the data has been generated about the user, about the vehicle, about the performance of the vehicle, and the multiple usage pattern around it. What is he doing? What is he buying? And so on, right? So then one of the business opportunities where there's a big traction and big topic where we are also working on, we have already been supporting the group in terms of generating good amount of $1 million. One is the data modernization there. So then with the data modernization, there are a couple of different use cases. Obviously, you can categorize them given the GDPR or here in also in India, ensuring the DPDP Act. You can say that, okay, there are some personalized data use cases where you need to get a consent from the user, and then you can drive certain that data to offer services through multiple service providers. Or there could be anonymous data use cases where you don't capture the personalized, his private privacy maintaining. And those anonymous data use cases are definitely going to be a much more useful. One of the business opportunity or a couple of things which we are working on is a predictive maintenance, which is very useful because you want to connect with all the ecosystem saying that, hey, my car has already traveled this much, so I need my oil filter replaced, my fuel, maybe air filter replaced, or I need certain XYZ replacement, which should happen, and that predictively, before it goes into some issues, the message goes to the either the dealer or to the filter supplier, where he gets the qualified opportunity to serve at his door, right, directly, right? And then multiple such use cases on the, then there is obviously the use case for the battery pass in the e-mobility, where the battery passport can ensure that before it gets into any trouble in terms of the thermal runaway, like safety related issue or battery health related issues, it need to be fixed, and then there is somebody who does that predictive analytics on the battery. He take care of that before it goes into issue, or even the battery has survived its life for automotive use, but then since I understand its value, I can use it much better on the second life or even on the resale purpose. And I think EV, the battery is really one of the key thing where the resale need a much more thought process, and the data of that battery usage has been quite useful. So there are multiple use cases, personalized and anonymous, where the ecosystem can really take the advantage, and as we say, it generates a more revenue mechanism for the OEM to ensure that they keep driving this connected ecosystem or connected technologies into the vehicles.
Sure. So solve a problem and there is an opportunity, in summary. Is that the fair way of putting it? Yeah. So let me go back to Mr. Sharad and Mr. Dhana. Opportunities are there, right? Like Mr. Yogesh pointed out, if you take an opportunity, if you take a problem, solve it, there's an opportunity. But once you solve the problem, it has to be adopted. Otherwise, the solution is just on paper. There is no value created out of that. So what do you think are the major challenges or risks that you see to drive adoption? More from your past experience, what do you think are the top 3 learnings to drive adoption so that people see that this use case is getting resolved through this technology?
So let's think of from the very beginning, wherein automotive or automobile was more like a mechanical thing, having gear set, steering wheel, and a drive. Obviously, an ICE through this. Now coming to something which is more like software driven, and further we are only talking about software defined vehicles and most of connectivity and things like those. So if we are coming from that particular background, there is huge, earlier the data which was being generated by the vehicle was really less. Now it is a substantial amount of data which is being produced. And further, I would say within the next 5 to 10 years, it would be like, I would say 20 times or maybe more than that the data would be generated. Earlier it was more like you were not, there were norms, but then either they were not, like governance was not there or because of certain things. Now you have telematics, as rightly said, you know when your battery is going to die, what is the predictive maintenance things and stuff like those. So now since earlier it was majorly when the breakdown had happened, you have to call a person on the road for home, like assistance, right? There was one opportunity wherein people were having those business opportunities saying that, okay, you subscribe for 1 year, give a subscription, will come and repair your vehicle. Now since there is an option wherein you actually get to know, okay, this failure is possible, so I should not be driving my vehicle for 1,000 kilometers now. Okay, 20, 30 kilometers is good enough. I may take a risk, but if I have that data available, I would not take that risk, right? Because beyond the city limits, the facility will not be available. So these kind of issues are already been resolved. Since this is a connected world now, you have your vehicle giving out that data to you, either through, as you said, video telematics or ADAS systems or your telematics systems. You know, okay, this much kilometers are already been driven. This is the predictive maintenance. Because of this failure or this particular issue of, let's say, some oil filter change or something, this particular component has gone bad and you shouldn't be driving. It would be completely logged or stuff like those. So that is one particular portion that you already have that information, which leads to not to take risk and drive safely. That is the biggest thing that I think during the last 5 years or so, because of the connected vehicles, this thing had happened. And you actually had reduced the risk of having failure on the road. That is the biggest thing. Second is, since now the components within the vehicle are communicating to each other, which was not there earlier. Now this has also improved your duration or the life cycle of the vehicle. Earlier it was like, because of one particular component failure, you used to have overall breakdown within a definitive time, saying that, okay, after 20,000 kilometers it will fail. But now since the components are talking to each other and they are able to tune itself based on those different parameters, I think you have a better life of your vehicle. You actually are able to sustain for a longer period of time. I think those are the two major things that comes across to my mind, which is actually had happened because of the technology advancement.
Give the assurance to the customer that a particular use case will play out and show the risk protection, then that's going to drive adoption.
Exactly.
To start with.
Exactly.
And Dhana, coming to you, do you see any points that can be added to this to drive adoption?
This is like, Sharad and Yogesh mentioned, right? So the data, so earlier we don't have that much data. So now we have with the advancement of hardwares where we can access the data and store the data. So which allows the engineers to analyze the data and to give better thing. So like even in my past, where we were collecting in the OEM experience when I was working, so we have a data. Like data is the major thing now, right? So when the failure happens, so that we were not knowing earlier. Whereas now that becomes, that is helping us. Like once we have the data, we can analyze it, okay, we can understand that, and based on that data, okay, we understood, okay, this is where the failure happens. So that way, we can design our product much better. So in the next version. So that is also another way of looking at. One is predictive maintenance. Other is how we can give better design the product. So based on the available data.
But how do you know where the failures will happen, and how do you validate the use cases, for example?
Yeah. With the advancement of the virtual tools, right? So also the competitive world, right? Sorry. So the competition is there, now we want to have things really fast, right? So that way gone are those days where we were doing all the tests in the proving grounds, we are take say for example vehicles, right? So we need to take it and then test it. Now we are doing everything virtually. With the more data we have, so analytically we are able to build the models and replicate the reality, and we are able to mimic the virtually, and we are able to validate it. So that way it gives a more confidence to the engineer to design much better, okay, and release a new product. So that is the major thing. And also take for example ADAS, right? So with respect to ADAS, we have multiple sensors, right? Like camera, radar, lidar. So these are the things which is trying to replace the driver, right? So these are perception algorithm, one has to do it. For the ADAS to function, it has to capture the data properly, right? It has to scan the environment and it has to tell, okay, these are the objects there, okay? Accordingly, we can have the ECUs will do the control algorithm, which says that whether you need to accelerate, take left, right, or stop, right? So to avoid accidents and so mishaps, everything. So that way, this becomes important, and with the advancement of our mathematical formulations, the engineering technologies, and also hardware computers, right? We are able to process huge amount of data. So which is helping us to do better.
Got it. So before we go to the audience for some questions, can we get a view on what is the next big thing as far as connected vehicles are concerned, right? What is coming next, and what should we watch out for, right? So let me start with Mr. Saumya, if you want to take a stab at it first.
See, what's next big is, it's already started, rather. How big and how bigger it will be, up to what extent it will be, it's a matter of time to see, and it's more of a demand and the supply to have a look at it. Like for example, as I just mentioned in my last point, the CV2X, that's going to come up in a much bigger form, which is absolutely going to transform the way we look at the telematics, look at the safety, we look out at the technology of the vehicles, the infrastructures, right? That's one of the most happening thing which is going to have. By next 4 or 5 years, we'll be seeing the trials which are already in place. Some started with an ambulance systems which are been given a green corridors. It has started with that. We are seeing the smart pedestrian crossings. The vehicles are automatically, the traffic signals are, we are seeing that they are becoming red to let the passengers or the pedestrians to move forward. So all these are now getting connected through a connectivity platform. So now again, the Department of Telecommunications have opened up 5G connectivity for the CV2X. So when we have all these ecosystems which are gradually putting up as a base, now it's a matter of time to see where we are heading towards, but we are absolutely going for a revolution in how we commute. That's for sure on the road. And of course, the vehicles are anyway getting smarter and much smarter day by day. Be it 360-degree rotation, cameras, ADAS, sensors all across. They are communicating directly to the OEMs, they are communicating to the consumers, they are communicating to the service centers. So they are becoming autonomous to a certain extent, directly or indirectly. Now, they are all going to fit into some blocks by the time we see that transformation happening. So that's how we see and look at what big things are going to come.
Sure, thank you. Vehicle to everything communication is the next big thing. So, Mr. Sharad or Mr. Yogesh, would you like to add on something to what Mr. Saumya said as the next big things?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with him. I think from the consumer perspective, the safety is at most critical beyond the cybersecurity we talked about. And in that safety perspective, that ADAS levels are, and the 5G, V2I, the technologies are making that ADAS and the safety aspect much improvement area. But another big thing definitely is the in-vehicle experience, right? How do I, as I said, when I'm traveling now, spending 1, 2, 3 hours minimum in a day in the car, how I can make my experience better while either doing something productive where I can have my Teams call, my certain podcast to be listening to, or any entertainment aspects, or while we talked about like integrating multiple service providers, having the in-vehicle payment, having the in-vehicle e-commerce, or my Zomato or food aggregator to be integrated, where I have started from now my office before I reach home, how I can have my food get delivered there, right? I mean, there are multiple, that in-vehicle experience of that convenience, comfort, and then productivity is definitely the way forward, which I see. And then technologies are enabling it. The ecosystem partners would like to connect to the car, being it the connected smart home, connected health, connected charging infrastructure, connected multiple service providers, or banking as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Sharad?
I somewhat agree to what he said, since as every connectivity to everything, whether it is your home, whether it is your vehicle, whether it is your healthcare products, whether it is your, as you said, food deliveries, and your so setting out, let's say I start up from my workplace, I want to go reach home, my vehicle knows it will be delayed, it can always reschedule the other meetings which were there. Or let's say, if you talk about the home automation, the powering on of the AC would be dependent on where I had already reached rather than with a fixed time. So those things are there, and that is the next step which would actually play a big role in the upcoming years with this cybersecurity and connected vehicles and the features which are coming in picture now.
Sure, lots of interesting days ahead. Entrepreneurs listening to this particular discussion will probably get some ideas to, make a business out of. So I think the time is up now. Let me hand back to the audience if we can take a couple of questions from them. Yeah, we have multiple questions. Yeshi?
I will just cut short to my question and some kind of clarification from the panel. You said initially, at the beginning, you said that it's the consumer who drives the technology and all. That is true to some extent. Secondly, as you mentioned also that the availability like iPhone, because there is a good technology available, people accepted it. There could be a third angle which I think, don't you think that it is also the necessity? Because the things are developed for our survival also. because the safety angle, the reduction of the carbon footprints and many other issues, it is forcing the policymakers, the government, the consumer, the manufacturer to adapt, to develop and adopt certain kind of technology. So if you think about that, how do you give the weightage mark to this kind of thing? Necessity is the mother of like kind of invention that we call. So if there is no necessity, probably many things would not have come today. We would have been working on the same thing what we were doing all the years. For example, small example I'll give you. I was the member of the Technical Standing Committee, CMBR. So for acceptance of the ABS, we had literally fought with the vehicle manufacturers. For years they refused. They said that it is on the ice surface. In India, we don't require ABS. But today, because of the necessity, because it is required, so it is now enforced, every vehicle is ABS. So how do you give the weightage to the necessities? I think the survival is bringing all those technical things.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, sir. I think one of the point there I would probably add there is the safety, right? I mean, that survival and the safety is the necessity there, which is driving this technology. But if you look at somebody talking about any convenience feature, that might be subjective, where the OEM may say that, okay, I don't see that much the traction from my segment, like if the segment is very sub, let's say 6-7 lakh something, and then for that segment, I cannot add a technology which is probably, it's not a necessity there. So I think I could take your point, but then it's more on the safety, security, those aspects, or it should be a value-driven need, where I am ready to pay for that Zomato integration in my car because I don't want to do that booking through my mobile, and I would like to use the IVS screen, for example. But it might be me, whereas somebody may say, hey, I don't need that in vehicle, I can manage it through my mobile, I mean, let's say. So the necessity is more driven from the safety, security angle. The convenience is subjective. Unless somebody sees the value and ready to pay for that, then it becomes quite viable for OEMs to take up that. I hope it kind of gives some thoughts.
Yeah, we had more questions. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I have one small question. Actually, it's really very fantastic that we are very much aware that we all are moving towards electrification and we are opting this EV technology. I want to know that if being a person that I'm going to buy one EV car, the first question which comes in my mind is the safety of the battery. Not the battery, the overall system, overall integration I'm talking about. So, means we have talked a lot about the technology, connected things and softwares, integration, so many things. But do you really feel that in India's infrastructure, the road system and the charging stations we have, and the climatic conditions, once it is changed or a drastic rain is there, do we really feel that we are having an electric vehicle and we are feeling so much safe that we can take this vehicle in any kind of conditions, even in some elevated temperatures as well? So what we are thinking about it, because if a person is going to buy a EV car, these are the first queries. He's not bothered about that, is it Bluetooth connected or any microprocessor or controller is being used or not. So these are the main things. What do you think that how we are looking after and how the government is thinking? What are their policies for that? Means the vehicle which are running on the road, are they really being tested up to that level or what?
Yeah, maybe I can add a couple of pointers coming from my powertrain background and working with the earlier battery company or BMS company as well, the battery management system. I think your points are pretty valid, and I would say those are very basic requirements when somebody is thinking of the EV. So, but overall, given the technology advancement, given even the battery requirements or certifications, okay, in particular Indian thought process environment, right? So already those things are in place, I would say. So today I wouldn't, coming from the engineering background, today I'm not that much worried about that safety aspect or that kind of like testing in those harsh. Obviously, there will be always some kind of a X, Y, Z scenario, which is very typical, where it's very difficult to avoid, essentially. However, now coming to the topic which we are connected, right, is the battery analytics. Okay, so because I am able to now get the vehicle data, the usage pattern, how much you are accelerating, braking, and how that is putting the load on the battery, and how my particular battery pack within those each cell, what are their current temperature, voltage, are getting subjected to, and are these within the range? If not, I need to isolate the battery. So, and now there is a ASIL kind of a D level functionality, which is very super safe kind of a requirement to make it happen. And for a battery, particularly ASIL C, ASIL D level kind of a mechanisms are placed where any anomaly happens, the battery get isolated, vehicle gets stopped, and you still have a good amount of, I would say in the today's scenario, 99% scenarios at least, the things are covered. That I can say overall. Given the control software, given the data analytics or battery analytics, that is kind of making it sure that even in the event of some unusual situation, it kind of quickly says that, okay, this temperature is going very beyond, let's say 45 degrees, so I need to either manage it thermally to get that temperature down, or I need to shut down or isolate the battery quickly. And then those happen in a microseconds now with the technological advancement.
Yeah, thanks, sir. One more thing, what I feel that if we are talking about any car, does it really actually justify the cost of that particular model? Means we are just replacing IC engine with the battery pack only. So customer usually asks that why you are, the particular model is costing 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs. And if you are just replacing an engine only, how we can talk about?
Okay, I think it's probably the subject. Maybe that's my personal view. Just immediately is that's your, as we say, it's a perception. Then again, because at the end of the day, you need to understand the TCO, right? Everybody says that. Then you don't look at that upfront cost. You look at then for a battery. I'm not kind of promoting the EV as say particularly, but I'm just trying to give a rationale based on the use case and based on the total cost of ownership. One has to make a decision whether it's ICE versus EV.
Agreed with this,
Sure.
but there was one, I think yeah.
I understand we have more questions, but due
Yeah,
to
please,
shortage of time, we can take more questions offline. Panelists are available, so I hope...
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all very much. Let me hand it back now to Yeshi, please.
Thank you so much. That was another excellent panel discussion. I would request you all to come together for a group picture.